Is this working? Yes. Welcome everybody. Welcome at the Queer Currents and welcome this afternoon. Girls Like Us event. Let me first explain what Queer Currents is. Queer Currents is a project we started 3 years ago because we wanted to have more content during the Pride Week. And we also want to accommodate more people from different groups who don't recognize themselves in both Canal Pride or in big parties. And so we started to think about what to do, and then we came up with the idea of 15 events, 15 locations in Amsterdam, and talking about 15 subjects of queerness. Every day is, so this is the second edition, and every day it's a different subject, and also every day is a different audience. So welcome everybody today. What I think it's very nice of today is that I invited Jessica and Katja to be the host of today. And I was thinking today that Jessica, I think we go back to the 90s. Yeah, when we were very old then. And it's great that we work together again, and we're trying every year also. And we were even thinking about doing something like this in Brussels, but it didn't work out because Brussels Pride was cancelled totally. Actually, of course, Pride in Amsterdam is cancelled as well. But we can do this, and as you see, you're in this COVID-19 position, so hopefully everybody stays healthy. You can wear a face mask if you want. I think it's wise to do it with so many people today. But welcome everybody, and enjoy today. And because we don't have a Pride, happy Pride. Jessica.
Dankjewel, Gees.
One question, sorry. There is a photographer, and if you don't want to be in the pictures, raise your hand now, because then, okay, that's one person. Okay, thank you very much.
Dankjewel, Gees. Thank you, Queer Currents, for inviting us, and welcome to everybody who came at 5 p.m. in the afternoon on a weekday through the almost train to see us. Maybe I'm quickly gonna say something about what's gonna happen in the next 2 hours. So I'm gonna do a quick introduction of the magazine and the project, and then I'm gonna give the word to Liz Allan, who's the editor of the book of manifestos that we're working on. I think she's gonna talk for like 20-25 minutes. After that, we can do a short Q&A. There's a break, I think, of 15 minutes. And then after that, we're gonna do a collective reading of one of the manifestos of the book, the Queer Nation Manifesto. Voilà. So I don't know, I lived in Amsterdam for 18 years, and since 6 years, I live in Brussels. And somehow I always think when I come to Amsterdam that everybody is familiar with my magazine, Girls Like Us. But I was here 2 days ago, and I met like 5 people who didn't know it. So the magazine is lying there. I brought the last 3 issues, so if you want to have a look and you can also buy them, please do. Girls Like Us is a feminist queer arts magazine publication that I started in 2005 here in Amsterdam. And I'm not coming from a magazine background, I'm coming from communication. But in 2000, like when I moved to Amsterdam from Brussels, beginning of the 2000s, I worked with a whole bunch of creative people on a lifestyle magazine called BLVD. And with some of these people went on to make Bud magazine, which was referred to, I think, also in the talk on Monday. Anyways, Bud was a queer, pink, gay zine, and I made a lesbian sister version called Cut. But of course, working with 2 gay guys, we had a lot of issues and discussions. So after 3 issues, we folded the whole thing. And in 2005, I came back with Girls Like Us, which is 15 years ago. So yeah, it's a long time. We had many different people working on the project, but I'm happy we're still alive, and I feel like the time caught up with us, and it's a good time to make a publication like that. So at one point, I think while working on the magazine, I kept bumping into different kind of manifestos, and in 2016, 17, the idea rose to maybe do something with that, and I collect them and publish them. So yeah, I think we're 4 or 5 years further, and well, yeah, Liz can tell more about it, but like, yeah, I think we did 1 year of research with a different editor, Clara Lopez. She's based in LA, but then she got a big job at UCLA and had to leave the project, and then Liz stepped in, thankfully, and I think what I envisioned was like a loosed, photocopied kind of thing with maybe 20 or 30 manifestos became like a really big thing with like over 80 manifestos and almost like a novella, I think, or almost like a new life work. So let me see. Well, I think that's it. Okay, Liz.
How's this? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, thanks. Thanks to Queer Currents, wherever you are, there you are. Thanks for the... It's kind of angling up there. Okay. Is that better? Yeah, okay. So, much even better. Yeah, thanks to Queer Currents for the for hosting, and thanks to Jessica, but I call her Jessica, for actually inviting me to be part of the Girls Like Us publishing project, of which the book that we're going to be publishing is the first non-magazine publishing project. Okay, let me just... Okay. This is a presentation just to give you a little bit more information about the book project, which has always been called the Queer and Feminist Manifesto book project. So it's, yeah, for Girls Like Us magazine, and here we are. I think I'm repeating myself a little. Here we go. It's always good to know where you are, though. That's very important. So thank you, Amsterdam. Who I am. This is some biographical information about me. I'm an artist and editor. I'll just read most of the things out off the screen here, but the images that you see below the text are a series of books that I've worked on. Not nearly all of them, but just an example. On the left-hand side, you'll see books that I've either been an editor or a managing editor for, and on the right, there's copy editing and proofreading work that I also do for publications. So I've been working in publishing for about 8 or so years. As a freelance publications manager, writer, and editor, I work with art organisations, independent publishers, artists, and cultural agents. As a member of the art collaboration All the Cunning Stunts, I make digital images for billboards, wallworks, lightboxes, and online platforms about the politics of gender representation. I helped to found Tender Centre, Rotterdam, a queer and feminist community centre. I was born and raised in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I live and work in Rotterdam. So that's who I am, that's where we are, and that's who I am. This is some queer art. I'm, as I said, an artist, and I work collaboratively with lots of different collectives. All the Cunning Stunts is one that I've been working with for, yeah, well, let's just say a while. And this is a work that we have exhibited with a local gallery in Rotterdam. And it's what's special about this work, because we do make a lot of work about queerness, is the image. I don't know if this, yeah, you can see the cursor. Here is actually from a page spread in Girls Like Us magazine. And so it kind of developed into a installation work for this particular, gives you just an example of some of the visual art. Now the description of the book of Queer and Feminist Manifesto. So I've described it a few times in a few different ways to lots of different people, and we've almost gotten to the point where now there's an actual description. It's almost every, okay, let me try and read this with a little bit more character in my voice, hang on. Okay. Almost every kind of intention is written and can be read. Every hope, dream and imaginary, collective and individual. This book of Queer and Feminist Manifestos is a collection of writings by artists and activists, poets and politicians, avant-gardists and gardeners. If it is safe to assume that all manifestos intend for the improvement of the lives of the people they are written for, then this book will present to you the most altruistic collection of manifestos this side of the feminist liberation movement. That's been edited, by the way. I also have an editor. We are looking at a new book title. It doesn't make much sense until you read the book. The book is not entirely written yet, and so the title potentially might change. But I quite like this one in the meantime. Megalia, the Rude People and the Elephant. I think the elephant might be me. A book of queer and feminist manifestos. It's good that only one person stood up at that point. Okay, so just to talk a little bit more about the background of the book, or how I ended up becoming the editor. A friend mentioned Jessica was looking for an editor for a book project, and I said, oh, that sounds amazing, I'd love to do that. So then I guess the word got around and she sent me, we had a conversation and then she sent me a more formal invitation. But I thought that when I came to the book project, it was, as Jessica mentioned, already something that was ongoing. And there were 30 or so manifestos in an Excel spreadsheet. There were several kind of like email addresses to people, because we also have to, of course, get the reprint permission rights to print these things. And the following sentence, with which she described the publication. So this person was actually, for me, like a very curious. Oh, now you're going to put it down. Okay, no, that's good. Yeah. How does that sound? Yeah. Okay. Improvements. So hopefully that's what I've been doing with the book. And this is the quote that kind of I came back to when I was trying to understand what it was that my job was. This is a multifold, and so this is Clara. Yeah, this is Clara, and she's really speaking to me, or I felt that she was very much speaking to me, because it was a very difficult project to suddenly be like authorial about feminist manifestos and queer manifestos, not feeling that I had a particular authorial position, understanding feminism or queerness. But then, of course, you have to start somewhere. So this is the quote that kind of, this is a multifold and sprawling process, since we understand that feminisms are many, and to encompass them all within limited printed pages seems an impossible task. And of course, I think that is directly what we're not going to achieve. We're not going to encompass this, this subject. So I began to read and collect more manifestos. And these, so the spreadsheet that we had started to fill up, and I suggested, why don't we do an open call? And so Instagram and Facebook, Girls Like Us readers, who wants to suggest manifestos? And suddenly the 30 went to a great deal more. And I started to talk about the book in other contexts. And I'd just like to say that I've always been speaking of it in the sense of it being a call for collectivity. So all the voices that are written or that are recorded by these manifestos are ones that have messages that are different but also similar in a lot of ways. Feminism and queerness have a lot of overlaps, and I think that I started to speak about, I will just read one of the quotes. What is given, what is understood, is what already appears to us. What we understand as queer and feminist, or queer feminist, or feminist queering, as it is, because of the efforts and bold voices of those who live and lived their liberation, as lesbian, gay, third gender, takatapui, amongst others. Living lives queerly before queer was an intersectional umbrella. Transgender, no gender, non-binary, these collective vocabularies create words for naming and being in their times and become of their times and of our times. Well, of our times. Despite and because of what surrounded them and us, the brave, daring, thinking and feeling people have made manifest and declared their needs and claimed rights, calling out to each other, and so often this is the way communities arise, recognize, and are able to support each other. So as the project progresses, so does my understanding of it. I developed a details-orientated system. I had a lot of columns to that spreadsheet, and I added a lot of data into those columns and a lot of writing into those columns. And manifestos became, it became obvious that manifestos were not just one thing. They were speeches, lectures, lists, poems, essays, web pages, sites for radical identification, prose poems, flyers, magazine, editorials, zines, letters, texts, pedagogy even, a mimeograph, responses, first-year academic papers, theses, blog posts, political declarations, and websites. My partner Fraser joined me in the readings, and we began to ask questions. Who are the readers and who are the writers? Whose voices are visible? Who's overlooked? Who is the manifesto trying to help? What changes does it call for? What is it bringing to change things? Why write this manifesto? What is the author's motivation? And what deep beliefs does it reflect? I also started doing some statistics, and we discovered that there are a lot of manifestos from the 1970s and a lot of manifestos from the last 10 years. This was quite interesting. So with these processes in place, things eventually became a bit, pardon me. Things eventually became a bit clearer, and I began making progress with the ordering of the manifestos. Thank you, Jessica. This is the most recent, thank you. This is the most recent development, is that within the book, because of course there are a lot of manifesto books on the market, and they are often arranged according to subject. And I found that these kinds of arrangements wasn't particularly queer because it lent a little bit too much to a kind of essentialist categorization. So I wanted to find a different way of arranging things, a different way of ordering things. And so actually putting together a list of the manifestos in this particular kind of order has been, quite a process. It's maybe interesting to know what manifestos are in the book. I can read the titles of the manifestos. Does that sound interesting? Yes? Okay, thanks. Okay, so a theory for the strange girl. Feminist, I'm just going to read the titles. A Theory for the Strange Girl, Feminist Manifesto, Manifesto of the Futurist Woman, Fag Hags Fight Back, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, Anarcho-Surrealist Insurrectionary Feminist Manifesto, Sexual Relations and Class Struggle, a Socialist Workers' Party pamphlet. The text is very small. Manifesto of Revolta Feminila, Manifesto of the Feminine Revolt, Vice Versa, America's Gayest Magazine, Feminist Publishing, an antiquated form, The Purpose of the Daughters of Bilitis, Editorial Manifesto, Working Women Mobilize for Struggle, The Working Woman, the Voice of the woman workers, Ain't I a Woman? You're better quieten down. There have always been great black woman artists. Dialogue on Women's Movement, Deep Les, Queers Read This, the Queer Nation Manifesto, Women Identified Women, the Scub Manifesto, Contrasexual Manifesto, Rant of the Menopausal Cyborg, the Empire, that's one of my favorites, I have to say. The Empire Strikes Back, a post-transsexual manifesto. Dyke Manifesto of New York Lesbian Avenger Manifesto. Direct Action, No Manifesto and a Manifesto Reconsidered. Manifesto for a Radical Femininity, for Another Cinema. I actually haven't read that one. I think I've read all of them apart from that one. The Personal is Political, Bitch Manifesto, Bitch Mutant Manifesto, The Feminist Manifesto, Freedom of Death, Ways to Deal with Rude People, 100 Antitheses, Fresh and Fruity, Refugia, Manifesto for Becoming Autonomous Zones, and Anywhere Is Manifesto, Fourth World Manifesto, A Lesbian Aesthetics, Manifesto for Maintenance Art, 1969, Women's Art, a Manifesto, Scum Manifesto, I Want a President, Mundane Afrofuturist Manifesto, Speaking in Tongues, the Third World Woman Writer, A Manifesto for the Feminist Artist, Manifesto Many Fluids, Hydrofeminism, Ecosex Manifesto, Cyborg Manifesto, Dialectic of Sex, Xenofeminism, Double Jeopardy, To Be Black and Female, Wages for Facebook, Asian Pacific American Women and Feminism, a comment by Kleinis Postfortisches Drama, Radical Tenderness Manifesto, Transcendencies, a Transgender Manifesto, Killjoy Manifesto, The Dominant Idea, Woman Suffrage, the Combahee River Collective Statement, Red Stockings Manifesto, Radical Women's Manifesto, Socialist Feminist Theory, Program and Organizational Structure, Trans Woman Manifesto, and Witch Manifesto. Well done, me. Okay. So now I'm writing the book, and most of my attention while writing about the manifestos has actually been with the introductions and the connections between them. So Fraser and I have been reading the manifestos and asking 3 questions, and in order to put it into a book format, there's a kind of connection that has been made. So you might have noticed in some of the lists, that some of them are connected just by their very being. But I have suggested some of the more obvious connections above. So Bitch Manifesto and Bitch Mutant Manifesto. Bitch Mutant Manifesto is like a cyber feminist update on Bitch Manifesto. And then we have Scum Manifesto and Scub Manifesto. Society for, excuse me, to the men in the audience, for cutting up men. And Scub Manifesto is Society for Cutting Up Boxes. So sorry to boxes. The Spectre Haunting Europe, which I think that might be a bit of a lead to understanding some of the broader connections. And where are all the great women artists? And there have always been great Black women artists, which I think is a great kind of connection there. Wages for Facebook and wages against housework. Once you read the book, you'll really understand what I'm talking about. I'm just hoping that the blank faces are are like, interesting. So the final draft is due to be delivered to the publishers very soon. Jessica, very soon, before the end of the month, and they're looking at a publishing date in autumn. We hope. And then I must also say that there is a initiative to create a feminist manifesto pants. Yes, and they will be some very wonderful quotes have been selected and will be printed on. I think some of these. Well, I won't read them out because I don't want to, favoritize any of them. Today we will be, so now here we are again. And we're going to have shortly a short break, but after the break we'll be coming back with a reading of one of the manifestos, which has been chosen by me for the purposes of the Pride, which is actually not happening, but we will do a manifesto reading instead. So this is from a group called Queer Nation. And I'm just going to read you a little bit of writing about what the Queer Nation Manifesto is in our words. Queer Nation emerged out of AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, or ACT UP, you're all very familiar with this, as a direct action organisation enraged at homophobic violence, government inaction towards AIDS crisis, towards the AIDS crisis, media prejudice, and the lack of visibility for gays and lesbians. Their mandate was to eliminate homophobia and increase outness, visibility, and freedom of movement for LGBT people. Queer Nation would regularly visit bars to create safe spaces for queers. The name Queer Nation is an acknowledgement that the LGBT community forms a distinct people due to their unique culture and customs. This is the kind of details-orientated, this is a reflection on my details-orientated approach. Most of the manifestos in the that were already collected were in PDF form, and then I would convert them into a text file. And so this is what we'll be reading from today, is the text file, and the manifesto has an introduction to the reading, which is like a page that goes on the top. So that's this page. And then the manifesto starts on page 2, and it's actually a group of this is what we'll be reading from, and these are the kind of sections. The titles of the sections are they're there. Okay, so I'm almost finished, and but I thought it might be like a good idea for me to explain what I understand the Queer Nation Manifesto to be, because you can read manifestos and you can really, different parts of the text can resonate with you in different ways. But I thought as the person that's kind of introducing this as a text to read, it might be interesting for you to understand what I understand about it. So personal testimonies from different, so what is the Queer Nation Manifesto? It's personal testimonies from different members of the LGBT plus community that reveal their true stories at the introduction of queer. So this is the idea that queer began in the 90s to be used as a term to refer to the full spectrum of LGBT community. And this is also in their words. So the idea of a personal testimony in someone's words, I think, is really resonates. So they're true stories that reveal the differences and difficulties that make them similar. So them being the community. True stories and the words that unite them. And true stories and a cause for the new umbrella word. This is also kind of part of an editing process, strangely. So these would be notes on the left, and then on the right here we have the explanation. Revolution, what the Queer Nation Manifesto, what is it bringing to help change things? It's bringing revolution for change, a moratorium on the promotion of heterosexuality. I think that's interesting. Personal testimonies that reveal the true stories of queers, a pledge to stand together and unite, to stop pretending that everything is all right, because it's not. We're under attack. The straight community is laughing at us and we're being looked at because of our sexual preference. Visibility is a political necessity, as is the freedom of movement, ability to express one's attractions in public, access to healthcare, ability to self-identify, and in doing so, reclaim a word that has been used to vilify and shame homosexual community to mean a positive and inclusive way of bringing solidarity to a whole spectrum of LGBT plus sexual identities. I've done manifesto readings before, and this is one that we've already read. I think all of the manifestos make significant contributions to queer and feminist rights and culture. And I think what's interesting about the Queer Nation Manifesto is that it does reveal connections and disconnections across queer struggles locally, internationally, and in the global local. And this idea of a nation of queer people, interesting. I think reading it is also questioning nationalism as a form for the protection of plural queer subjects. So I just made a note here. That is, we question whether the form of a queer nation would bring us into community. We can chat about it afterwards. So usually we would have a conversation and talk about what we understand about the manifestos. And this was just a slide with with an example of some of the things that have come up in the past. So yeah, that is the book project, and we will, just 1 second, I'll just go to my desktop here. And after the break, we're going to read from the manifesto. And this is just the first page. And so maybe we'll just go one page. There's also copies of the manifesto that people can, if you feel like reading, because parts of the manifesto are already, we already had a conversation. Actually, should I introduce? Is it a good time? No? For the further intro, just to briefly introduce the readers for the manifesto. Well, first of all, me, but you already know me again. And then we also have Simon Fraser, and we have Susie, and we have Katja. You go? Yeah, you will. Yeah. And so yeah, there's, I don't know if you can remember, there's about 12 or so different sections to the manifesto. So there's 4 readers at the moment, and then we would please be very happy and grateful if there was people that felt like they would like to join us. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we move on. And if you want to read, come to Katja, who's sitting here, but maybe you can. And also, I prepared a very DIY email list, because we're going to launch the book with a pre-sale option in order to fund it. So if you want to be part of that, come and fill in your name and email so we can contact you. So we see each other like in 6:10, I think.
Hello, welcome back. Nice to see so many people returned. That's always a good sign. Sorry. So we're going to do some reading of the Queer Nation Manifesto. I just wanted to make it available for you to see on the screen behind us, because I think that hopefully there'll be lots of different interpretations of the text, but also lots of different accents, so you can also read along. So thank you to the people that have spontaneously decided to read with us. I'm really, really happy about that. And so maybe just for those that have already been invited and had the opportunity to have read the text already, they just put their hand up, just so that people understand which of the texts, which of the readers have been rehearsing. Oh, okay, no, don't worry about that. That was a silly question. Okay. I'd also like to mention that Susie will also be reading from the text and will perhaps make comments at certain points. And I'm going to start the reading off. And for those of you who have forgotten, my name is Liz Allan, and I'm the editor of the Book of Queer and Feminist Manifestos. So the Queer Nation Manifesto is from 1990, and it's written by Queer Nation. And it is a text of a manifesto that was originally passed out by people marching with the ACT UP contingent in the New York Gay Pride Parade in 1990. So I'm going to start. How can I tell you? How can I convince you, brother, sister, that your life is in danger? That every day you wake up alive, relatively happy, and a functioning human being, you are committing a rebellious act. You, as an alive and functioning queer, are a revolutionary. There is nothing on this planet that validates, protects, or encourages your existence. It is a miracle you are standing here reading these words. Theatricality. You should, by all rights, be dead. Don't be fooled. Straight people own the world, and the only reason you have been spared is you're smart, lucky, or a fighter. Straight people have a privilege that allows them to do whatever they please, and if without fear. But not only do they live a life free of fear, they flaunt their freedom in my face. Their images are on my TV, in the magazine I bought, in the restaurant I want to eat in, and on the street where I live. I want there to be a moratorium on straight marriage, on babies, and on public displays of affection among the opposite sex, and media images that promote heterosexuality. Until I can enjoy the same freedom of movement and sexuality as straights, their privilege must stop, and it must be given over to me and my queer sisters and brothers. Straight people will not do this voluntarily, and so they must be forced into it. Straights must be frightened into it, terrorized into it. Fear is the most powerful motivator. No one will give us what we deserve. Rights are not given. They are taken by force if necessary. It is easier to fight when you know who your enemy is. Straight people are your enemy. They are your enemy when they don't acknowledge your invisibility and continue to live in and contribute to a culture that kills you. Every day, one of us is taken by the enemy, whether it is an AIDS death due to homophobic government inaction or a lesbian bashing in an all-night diner in a supposedly lesbian neighborhood. We are being systematically picked off, and we will continue to be wiped out unless we realize that if they take one of us, they must take all of us. An army of lovers cannot lose. Being queer is not about a right to privacy. It is about the freedom to be public. To just be who we are, it means every day fighting oppression, homophobia, racism, misogyny, the bigotry of religious hypocrites, and our own self-hatred. We have been carefully taught to hate ourselves. And now, of course, it means fighting a virus as well, and all those homo haters who are using AIDS to wipe us off the face of the earth. Being queer means leading a different sort of life. It's not about the mainstream, profit margins, patriotism, patriarchy, or being assimilated. It's not about executive directors, privilege, and elitism. It's about being on the margins, defining ourselves. It's about gender and secrets, gender fuck and secrets. What's beneath the belt and deep inside the heart. It's all about the night. Being queer is grassroots because we know that every one of us, everybody, every cunt, every heart, every arse and dick is a world of pleasure waiting to be explored. Every one of us is a world of infinite possibility. We are an army because we have to be. We are an army because we are so powerful. We have so much to fight for. We are the most precious of endangered species. And we are an army of lovers because it is we who know what love is. Desire and lust too, we invented them. We come out of the closet, face the rejection of society, face firing squads, just to love each other every time. That camera is really in people's. What's this? Yeah, thanks. Every time we fuck, we win. We must fight for ourselves. No one else is going to do it. And if in that process we bring greater freedom to the world at large, then great. We've given so much to that world, democracy, all the arts, the concepts of love, philosophy, and the soul, to name just a few of the gifts from our ancient Greek dykes' bags. Let's make every space a lesbian and gay space, every street a part of our sexual geography, a city of yearning and then total satisfaction, a city in a country where we can be safe and free and more. We must look at our lives and see what's best in them, and see what's best in them. See what is queer and what is straight, and let that straight chaff fall away. Remember, there is so little time, and I want to be a lover of each and every one of you. Next year, we march naked. Okay. Who is it that's reading the next part? Oh, do you have a microphone?
I'm angry. The strong sisters told the brothers that there were two important things to remember about the coming revolutions. The first is that we will get our asses kicked. The second is that we will win. I'm angry. I'm angry for being condemned to death by strangers saying you deserve to die and AIDS is the cure. Fury erupts when a Republican woman wearing thousands of dollars of garments and jewelry minces by the police line, shaking her head, chuckling and wagging her finger at us like we are sorry. recalcitrant children, making absurd demands and throwing a temper tantrum when they aren't met. Angry, while Joseph agonizes over $8,000 a year of AZT, which might keep him alive a little longer, and which does make him sicker than the disease he is diagnosed with. Angry as I listen to a man tell me that after changing his will for five times, he is running out of people to leave things to. All of his best friends are dead. Angry when I stand in a sea of quilt panels or go to a candlelit march and attend yet another memorial service. I will not march silently with a fucking candle, and I want to take that goddamn quilt and wrap myself in it and furiously rant and in my hair and curse every god, religion ever created. I refuse to accept a creation that cuts people down in the third decade of their life. It is cruel and vile and meaningless, and everything I have in me rails against this absurdity. And I raise my face to the clouds, and a raglan laugh that sounds more than demonic and joyous erupts from my throat. And tears stream down my face. And if this disease doesn't kill me, I might just die of frustrations. My feet pound the street, and Peter's hands are chained to a pharmaceuticals company reception desk, while the receptionist looks on in horror, and Eric's body lies rotting in a Brooklyn cemetery, and I will never hear his flute resounding off the walls of the meeting house again.
And I see the line of old people in Tompkins Square Park, huddled in their long wool coats in June to keep out the cold they perceive is there and to cling to whatever little life has left to offer them. And I think, they understand. And I'm reminded of the people who strip and stand before a mirror each night before they go to bed and search their bodies for any mark that might not have been there yesterday, a mark that the scourge has visited them. And I'm angry when the newspapers call us victims and sound alarms that it might soon spread to the general population. And I want to scream, who the fuck am I? And I want to scream at New York Hospital with its yellow plastic bags marked isolation linen, ropa infecciosa, and its orderlies in latex gloves and surgical masks, skirt the bed as if its occupant will suddenly leap out and douse them with blood and semen, giving them to the plague. And I'm angry at straight people who sit smugly wrapped in their self-protective coat of monogamy and heterosexuality, confident that this disease has nothing to do with them because it only happens to them. And the teenage boys who, upon spotting my silence equals death button, begin chanting, faggot's gonna die, and I wonder, who taught them this? Enveloped in fury and fear, I remain silent while my button mocks me every step of the way. And the anger I feel when a television program on the quilt gives profiles of the dead, and the list begins with a baby, a teenage girl who got a blood transfusion, an elderly Baptist minister and his wife, and when they finally show a gay man, he's described as someone who knowingly infected teenage male prostitutes with the virus. What else can you expect from a faggot? I'm angry.
Since time began, the world has been inspired by the works of queer artists. In exchange, there has been suffering, there has been pain, there has been violence. Throughout history, society has struck a bargain with its queer citizens. They must pursue creative careers if they do so discreetly. Through the arts, queers are productive, lucrative, entertaining, and even uplifting. These are the clear-cut and useful byproducts of what is otherwise considered antisocial behavior. In cultured circles, queers may quietly coexist with an otherwise disapproving power elite. At the forefront of the most recent campaign to bash queer artists is Jesse Helms, arbiter of all that is decent, moral, Christian, and American. For Helms, queer art is quite simply a threat to the world. In his imaginings, heterosexual culture is too fragile to bear up to the admission of human or sexual diversity. Quite simply, the structure of power in the Judeo-Christian world has made procreation its cornerstone. Families having children assures consumers for the nation's products and a workforce to produce them, as well as a built-in family system to care for its ill, reducing the expense of public healthcare systems. All non-procreative behavior is considered a threat, from homosexuality to birth control to abortion as an option. It is not enough, according to the religious right, to consistently advertise procreation and heterosexuality. It is also necessary to destroy any alternatives. It is not art Helms is after, it is our lives. Art is the last safe place for lesbians and gay men to thrive. Helms and has developed a program to peers from the one arena that they have been permitted to contribute to our shared culture. Helms is advocating a world free from diversity or dissent. It is easy to imagine why that might feel more comfortable to those in charge of such a world. It is also an American landscape flattened by such power. Helms should just ask for what he is hinting at. State-sponsored art of totalitarianism, art that speaks only in Christian terms, art which supports the goals of those in power, art that matches the sofas in the Oval Office. Ask for what you want, Jesse, so that men and women of conscience can mobilize against it, as we do against the human rights violations of other countries, and fight to free our own country's dissidents.
If you're queer, shout it. Queer under siege. Queer being attacked on all forms, and I'm afraid it's okay with us. In 1969, queers were attacked. It wasn't okay. Queers fought back, took to the street, shouted. In 1990, there were 50 queer bashing. In the month of May alone, violent attack. 3,720 men and women, children die of AIDS in the same month caused by non-violent attack. The government in action rioted in society growing homophobia. This is in institutionalized homophobia, perhaps more dangerous to the existence of queers because the attacks are fearless. We allow these attacks by our own continual lack of action against them. AIDS has affected the straight world, and now they are blaming us for AIDS and using it as a way to justify the violence against us. They do not want us anymore. They will beat us, rape us, kill us before they will continue to live with us. What will it take for us not to be okay? Feel some rage? Is it rage does not empower us? Try fear. It does not work? Try panic. Shout it. Be proud. Do whatever you need to do to tear yourself away from the customary state of acceptance. Be free. Shout. In 1969, queers fought back. In 1990, queers say, okay, next year we will be here. I hate Jesse Helms. I hate Jesse Helms so much. I rejoice if he dropped dead. If someone killed him, I consider it his own fault. I hate Ronald Reagan too, but he's mass murder my people for 8 years. But to be honest, I hate him even more for illusionizing Ryan White without first admitting his guilt, without begging forgiveness for Ryan's death, and for the death of tens of thousands of PWAs, most of them queer. I hate him for making a mockery of our grief. I hate the effing Pope. I hate the effing Cardinal O'Connor. I hate the whole effing Catholic Church. Some goes for the military, especially the American law enforcement official, the cops, state-sanctioned sadists who brutalize street transvestite prostitutes, queer prisoners. I also hate the medical and mental health establishment, particularly the psychiatrist who convinced me not to have sex with men for 3 years until we, meaning he, could make me bisexual rather than queer. I hate the educational profession for its share in dividing thousands of queer teens to suicide every year. I hate respectable art world, the entertainment, respectable artwork, and the entertainment industry, and the mainstream media, especially the New York Times. In fact, I hate every sector of this straight establishment in this country, the worst of whom actively want all queers dead, the best of whom never stick with their neck out to keep us alive. I hate straight people who think they have anything intelligent to say about outing. I hate straight people who think stories about themselves are universal, but stories about us are only about homosexuality. I hate straight people recording artists who make their careers off of queer about homosexuality. I hate straight about sexuality. I hate straight recording artists who make their careers of queer people, then attack us, then act hurt when we get angry and deny having wronged us either, and then apologize for it. I hate straight people who say, I don't see why you feel the need to wear those buttons and t-shirts. I don't go around tell the whole world I'm straight. I hate that in 12 years of public education, I was never taught about queer people. I grew up thinking I was the only queer in the world. And I hate even more the most queer kids still grow up the same way. I hate that I was traumatized by other kids for being a faggot. But more, I was taught to feel ashamed for being the object of their cruelty, taught to feel it was my fault. I hate the Supreme Court of this country said it's okay to criminalize me because of how I make love. I hate that so many straight people are so concerned about my goddamn sex life. I hate so many twisted straight people become parents while I have to fight like hell to be allowed to be a father. I hate straight. Where are you, my sisters? Invisibility is our responsibility. I wear my pink triangle everywhere. I do not lower my voice in public when talking about lesbian love or sex. I always tell people I'm a lesbian. I don't want to be asked about my boyfriend. I don't say it's none of one's business. I don't do this for straight people. Most of them don't know what the pink triangle even means. Most of them could not care less that my girlfriend and I are totally in love or having a fight on the street. Most of them don't notice us no matter what we do. I do what I do to reach other lesbians. I do what I do because I don't want lesbians to assume I'm a straight girl. I'm out at all times, everywhere, because I want to be reached. Maybe you'll notice me. Maybe start talking. Maybe you'll be friends. Maybe we won't say a word, but our eyes will meet, and I will imagine you naked, sweating, open-mouthed, your back arched, as if I'm effing you. And we'll be happy to know we aren't the only ones in the world. We'll be happy we found each other without saying a word, maybe just for a moment. But no, you won't wear a pink triangle on that linen lapel. You won't meet my eyes if I flirt with you on the street. You avoid me on the job because I'm too out. You chastise me in bars because I'm too political. You ignore me in public because I bring too much attention to my lesbianism. But then you want me to be your lover. You want me to be your friend. You want me to love you, support you, fight for you, right to exist. Where are you? You talk about invisibility, then retreat to your homes to nest with your lovers or cruise in the bar with pals and stumble home in a cab or sit silently and politely by while your family, your boss, your neighbors, your public servants distort and disfigure us, deride us, punish us, then home again. You feel like screaming. Then you pad your anger with a relationship or a career or a party with other dykes. Like you wonder why we cannot find each other, why you feel lonely, angry, alienated. Get up, wake up, sisters. Your life is in your hands. When I risk it all to be out, I risk it for both of us. When I risk it all and it works, which it often does, if you would try, it benefits, so do you. When it does not work, I suffer and you do not. But girl, you cannot wait for other dykes to make the world safe for you. Stop waiting for a better, more lesbian future. The revolution could be here if you started it. Where are my sisters? I'm trying to find you. I'm trying to find you. How come I can only see you on Gay Pride? We are out. We are effing out.
When anyone assaults you for being queer, it is queer bashing, right? A crowd of 50 people exit a gay bar as it closes. Across the street, some straight boys are shouting faggots and throwing beer bottles at the gathering, which outnumbers them by 10 to 1. 3 queers make a move to respond, getting no support from the group. Why did a group this size allow themselves to be sitting ducks? Tumping's Square Park, Labor Day. At an annual outdoor concert/drag show, a group of gay men were harassed by teens carrying sticks. In the midst of thousands of gay men and lesbians, this straight boys beat 2 gay men to the ground, then stood around triumphantly, laughing amongst themselves. The MC was alerted and warned the crowd from the stage. You girls be careful, when you dress up, it drives the boys crazy. As if it were a practical joke inspired by what the victims were wearing rather than pointing attack on anyone and everyone at the event. What would it have taken for that crowd to stand up for its attackers? After James Sapolorti, an openly gay man, was murdered in cold blood on Staten Island this winter, a single demonstration was held in protest. Only 100 people came. When Yusuf Hawkins, a black youth, was shot to death for being on white turf, in Bensonhurst, African Americans marched through that neighborhood in large numbers again and again. A black person was killed because he was black, and people of color throughout the city recognized it and acted on it. The bullet that hit Hawkins was meant for a black man, any black man. The most gays and lesbians think that the knife that punctured Zapalotti's heart was meant only for him. The straight world has us to convince that we are helpless, and deserving victims of the violence against us, that queers are immobilized when faced with a threat. Be outraged. These attacks must not be tolerated. Do something. Recognize that any act of aggression against any member of our community is an attack on every member of the community. And ferociously we will be object of their hatred. Your body cannot be an open target for violence. Your body is worth protecting. You have a right to defend it, no matter what they tell you. Your queerness must be defended and respected. You'd better learn that your life is immeasurably valuable, because unless you start believing that, it can easily be taken away from you. If you know how to gently and efficiently immobilize your attackers, then by all means do it. If you lack those skills, then think about gouging out of his fucking eyes, slamming his nose back into his brain, slashing his throat with a broken bottle. Do whatever you can, whatever you have to save your life.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm reading from Why Queer? Queer. Do we really have to use that word? It's trouble. Every gay person has his or her own take on it. For some, it means strange and eccentric and kind of mysterious. That's okay. We like that. But some gay girls and boys don't. They think they are more normal than strange. And for others, queer conjures upon those awful memories of adolescent suffering. Queer. It's forcibly bittersweet and quaint at best, weakening and painful at worst. Could not we just use gay instead? It's a much brighter word. And isn't it synonymous with happy? When will you militants wake up and get over the novelty of being different? Why queer? Well, yes, gay is great. It has its place. But when a lot of lesbians and gay men wake up in the morning, we feel angry and disgusted, not gay. So we've chosen to call ourselves queer. Using queer is a way of reminding us how we are perceived by the rest of the world. It's a way of telling ourselves we do not have to be witty and charming people who keep our lives discreet and marginalized in the straight world. We use queer as gay men loving lesbians and lesbians loving being queer. Queer, unlike gay, does not mean male. And when spoken to other gays and lesbians, it's a way of suggesting we close ranks and forget temporarily our individuality difference because we face a more insidious common enemy. Yeah, queer can be a rough word, but it's It is also a sly and ironic weapon we can steal from the homophobic's hands and use against him. No sex police. For anyone, for anyone to say that coming out is not part of the revolution, it is missing the point. Positive sexual images and what they manifest save lives because they affirm those lives and make it possible for people to attempt to live as self-loving instead of self-loathing. As the famous Black is Beautiful changed many lives, so does Read My Lips affirm queerness in the face of hatred and invisibility, as displayed in a recent governmental study of suicide that state at least one-third of all teen suicides are queer kids. This is further exemplified by the rise in HIV transmission amongst those under 21. We are most hated as queer for our sexualness, that is our physical contact with the same sex. Our sexuality and sexual expression are what makes us most susceptible to physical violence. Our difference, our otherness, our uniqueness can either paralyze us or politicize us. Hopefully, the majority of us will not let it kill us.
Why in the world do we let heteros into queer clubs? Who gives a fuck if they like us because we really know how to party? We have to in order to blow off steam. They make us feel all the time. They make out wherever they please and take up too much room on the dance floor, doing ostentatious couple dances. They wear the heterosexuality like a keep out sign or like a deed of ownership. Why the fuck do we tolerate them when they invade our space like it's their right? Why do we let them show off heterosexuality, a weapon their world wields against us, right in our faces, in the few public spots when we can be sexy with each other and not fear attack? It's time to stop letting the straight people make all the rules. Let's start by posting this sign outside every queer club and bar. Rules of conduct for straight people. 1. Keep your displays of affection, kissing, hand-holding, embracing to a minimum. Your sexuality is unwanted and offensive to many here. 2. If you must slow dance, be as inconspicuous as possible. 3. Do not gawk or stare at lesbians or gay men, especially bull dykes and drag queens. We are not your entertainment. 4. If you cannot comfortably deal with someone of the same sex making a pass at you, get out. 5. Do not flaunt your heterosexuality. Be discreet. Risk being mistaken for a lesbian or a homo. 6. If you feel these rules are unfair, go fight homophobia in straight clubs or go fuck yourself. Hello. I hate straights. I have friends, some of them are straight. Year after year, I see my straight friends. I want to see them, to see how they are doing, to add newness to our long and complicated histories, to experience some continuity. Year after year, I continue to realize that the facts of my life are irrelevant to them and that I am only half listened to, that I am an appendage to the doings of a greater world, a world of power and privilege, of the laws of installation, a world of exclusion. That's not true, argue my straight friends. There is one certainty in the politics of power. Those left out of it beg for inclusion, while the insiders claim they already are. Men do it to women, whites do it to blacks, and everyone does it to queers. The main dividing line, both conscious and unconscious, is procreation, that magic word, family. Frequently, the ones who are born into it disown us when they find out who we really are. And to make matters worse, we are prevented from having our own. We are punished, insulted, cut off, and treated like seditionaries in terms of child rearing, both damned if we try and damned if we abstain. It's as if the propagation of the species is such a fragile directive that without enforcing it as if it were an agenda, humankind would melt back into the primeval ooze. I hate having to convince straight people that lesbians and gays live in a war zone, that we're surrounded by bomb blasts only we seem to hear, that our bodies and souls are heaped high, dead from fright or bashed or raped, dying of grief or disease, stripped of our personhood. I hate straight people who can't listen to queer anger without saying, hey, all straight people aren't like that. I'm straight too, you know. As if their egos don't get enough stroking or protection in this arrogant, heterosexual world. Why must we take care of them in the midst of our just anger brought on by their effed up society? Why add the reassurance of course I don't mean you, don't act that way. Let them figure out for themselves whether they deserve to be included in our anger. Because of course that would mean listening to our anger, which they almost never do. They deflect it by saying, I'm not like that, or now who's generalizing, or you'll catch more flies with honey, or if you focus on the negative, you just give out more power, or you're not the only one in the world who's suffering. They say, don't yell at me, I'm on your side. I think you're overreacting, boy, you're bitter. Let yourself be angry. They've taught us that good queers don't get mad. They've taught us so well that we not only hide our anger from them, we hide it from each other. We hide it from ourselves. We hide it with substance abuse and suicide and overachieving in the hope of proving our worth. They bash us and stab us and shoot us and bomb us, even in ever increasing numbers. And still we freak out when angry queers carry banners or signs that say bash back. For the last decade, they let us die in droves, and still we thank President Bush for planting an effing tree, applaud him for likening people with AIDS to car accident victims who refuse to wear seatbelts. Let yourself be angry. Let yourself be angry that the price for visibility is the constant threat of violence, anti-queer violence, to which practically every segment of this society contributes. Let yourself feel angry that there is no place in this country where we are safe, no place where we are not targeted for hatred and attack, the self-hatred, the suicide of the closet. The next time some straight person comes down on you for being angry, tell them that until things change, you don't need any more evidence the world turns at your expense. You don't need to see only hetero couples grocery shopping on your TV. You don't want any more baby pictures shoved in your face until you can have or keep your own. No more weddings, showers, anniversaries,
please, unless they are our own brothers and sisters celebrating. And tell them not to dismiss you by saying, you have rights, you have privileges, you are overreacting, or you have a victim's mentality. Tell them, go away from me until you change. Go away and try on a world without the brave, strong queers that are its backbone, that are its guts and brains and souls. Go tell them, go away until they have spent a month working hand in hand in public with someone of the same sex. After they survive that, then you'll hear what they have to say about queer anger. Otherwise, tell them to shut up and listen.
Well, thanks everybody that read, and that was amazing and complicated. And the manifesto is a very complicated manifesto, so it would be really good if we could maybe talk a bit more about responses and reactions to things that were said. And I think a lot of people here have microphones, but this one is also a free floating microphone. So, oh yeah, and looks like there's another one too. Maybe we also just need a moment. I haven't prepared for this part of the evening, but yeah, is there anyone that has question, comment? Yeah.
Hi. Okay. I don't really know who to direct it to, but I was just wondering, anybody can answer this, which isn't a good start. But anyway, what's your opinion on the kind of violent aspect of it? Because a lot of those talked about violence, and personally, while I really agree with everything they're saying, I never believe in like a violent solution, if you will. So, any ideas on that?
Even though I don't think that like violence, I found myself in many situations where the only language that the other person would understand was violence, and trying to have a conversation, trying to explain things or have a discussion did not work. And the only way was to get angry and doesn't have to be physical violence, but like verbal violence was the only way that I could be understood by the promoter of violence themselves. And yeah, it was the only possibility to let them understand that I'm not accepting their behavior anymore.
Yeah, I don't really have that much to say, but I do think it's a bit too easy to just say physical violence is wrong in all cases, because Stonewall was also an act of physical violence, and we would not be here without that.
I think I heard much more descriptions of violence targeting at queer people than of queer people acting violently. Is that me?
I normally always say, a lot of the times I believe the straight world, not because I'm of the queer community, but a lot of the times the straight world create most of the wars and violence that we see in the world today. Not targeting anybody, but it's just a blatant fact. And also some of the queer people that become violent is because we need to protect ourselves. I, for one, I come from Trinidad and Tobago, and it's very difficult, very, very difficult there. And as much as you want to be a normal person, it's very hard to be a normal person there. I'm not saying in every sectoral life there is good and bad, but you had to become very, very violent to be able to survive. Susie is also from there. Yeah, you have to. If you want to live as a queer person, you have to. Because a lot of the times.
But is it more defense or attack? Is it?
Oh, no defense.
Okay, that's kind of what I was getting at. For me personally, the attack sounds a bit.
But why do you consider it an attack and not self-defense?
I don't know, it was just the wording. Like, it sounded to me like it was also like, let's get back, but not in that kind of, like retaliation as opposed to defense, which I think. But again, I do totally agree with everything you said. So, yeah, that totally makes sense. But I also think it's important to look at the context of these manifestos, because this one is from 1990, in the super height of the AIDS crisis, and I think there was just a lot of anger, and I don't think it wants to speak like for all times in a way. I think it's really because I think also in the manifesto they refer to the Stonewall riots, and I think it's just also a reminder to not to forget where queer people come from and what they had to to fight for over the years, and and maybe today, I guess for a lot of people, it's still the same situation. So, yeah.
That is what I wanted to also say. In a lot of countries, it's totally different up to today. So this struggle is still on in a lot of different countries. Certain parts of Europe, you'll be a bit okay, but in the Caribbean, it's very, very difficult.
Liz, is there, I'd be curious to hear also, like from the many manifestos that you've compiled and about this particular one as what feels like, obviously, as has been raised, that this is a historical document and a very, very urgently written, urgently published historical document. How is it for you to select this for us to read today as one of those historical documents, or why that one from among all of the 80 that you've discovered?
That's a good question, Ash. I think I chose this manifesto because it had a link to the Pride Parade, and that was a theme of the queer currents. So it was a very simple selection, but it is it's almost like many manifestos in one. And I think that the way that I understand it, or the way that I would respond, would be to also just reiterate what has been said already, that anger is like a very strong emotion, and there's a lot of there's a lot of anger involved in the queer and feminist struggles, because especially they didn't feel that they were being heard, or that there was a place for them in the community or in society. So I think while and I'm kind of a non-violent person as well, it's uncomfortable to hear these kinds of statements. I think that also the point made by the person sitting at the back has to also be repeated, that a lot of the violent statements are ones that are repeated by queer people that have been things that have been threats that had been made towards them. So it's I think it is a chronicle, or a kind of it's a stating of what has happened. Not I think because I think sometimes out loud or doing a reading or the words on a page is and when it you think, oh, am I standing behind these words, or that I'm doing kind of reenacting them? And I think it's important to hear the difficult situation that these people were in.
Hi. I was just thinking about how a lot of these manifestos that bring on about this kind of powerful rage, and how they were written in the AIDS crisis, and how right now we're also in a pandemic, and kind of thinking about that we become complacent when we're given crumbs, like in certain countries that have like gay marriage, suddenly everything is kind of like centered around normalization of queer experience, more like homosexual experience, and not kind of highlighting the difference of experience of queer people. And now I feel that things are kind of bubbling to the surface because of, I don't know, like also a pandemic. I guess like a general rage in many different kind of marginalized communities, not only queer communities, but I was just thinking about that link, and I guess it's not a question, but just a kind of like, so like to address like pandemics and activism, because like a kind of like what Octavia Butler was saying about like how a pandemic is like the only way for people to kind of really like pay attention.
Maybe too much attention. But yeah, I think that there are parallels. And I think one of the things that I found when putting together this book was that a lot of the manifestos, while they speak in as historical documents, they also they speak of situations that are occurring today in different parts of the world. And yeah, I think it is a real when you call for a kind of collective togetherness, then it's necessary to understand that there are many differences within different experiences at different places at different times, and that's why I think that it went from 30 manifestos to like over 70 manifestos, because there was this kind of growing awareness and the understanding that all of these struggles are existing and in a contemporary sense, in a now sense. So those frictions between different ways of understanding even queer or homosexual normalization, what actual different kinds of rights and declarations exist in different places that people can be let's say different countries have different laws around homosexuality, and that makes it much more it's like much more difficult when you don't have any laws protecting you, and that causes all sorts of situations, and I think that being being a person that is not like is only coming to an understanding of what that means for people's lives on a kind of more day-to-day basis, then it's I think it's I'm kind of stumbling over my words a bit here, but I think it's like reading these manifestos has actually made me aware of the different struggles of different people in different places at different times. Also in this room, yeah.
Sorry, I just see a link between that time and this time, like just
Yeah.
because I've actually seen like how people are actually coming to action, like when it comes to like how a lot of working class people are trans, for example, it's like hard to find a job. So I've just literally seen like a whole, like you know how in New York like a whole like flat was bought for like black trans women, like, and I don't know, I've seen a lot more action and somehow this connection between pandemic and like actual like actually helping working class people who then die in the system that necessitates the action. Like
I like, for me, for example, I think like people younger than 30 years that did not experience the AIDS pandemic now rereading this text, like because of being, well, AIDS epidemic and like now being in this COVID pandemic, like I can understand more the context because I'm living through it. So I can get this understanding of what happened before much better. And also the other way around, like I can see how like all the activism that is happening now and also just very directly linked to Black Lives Matter, how there's this uprising of activism and action and rioting and looting happening at the same time. Like it's inevitable for me to see both a connection from 80s, 90s to like the current time, and also then like I look at marginalized communities and how they're the first ones being affected by this pandemic, like disabled and trans people not being able to access the medical care that otherwise they were having access to, like working class people not having anymore an income and not being protected by the government, sex workers not being able to like safely work or not being able to work at all under these conditions, and especially in the Netherlands being like the only kinds of sex workers that actually haven't been given economical support through this pandemic, and how like again you can see how like queer and Black and disabled people are the first ones that are being ignored and that are being damaged by an epidemic again. And it's just like it's resonating a lot.
But also iterating on what Liz was talking about as well too. When and also you when there's a different pandemic comes around and we think that as queer people we are in the same era of it and we start protesting or fighting just as Black Lives Matter, you still see where queer people is still treated like, even though we stand with the majority, which is the straight community, we are still treated less than and even murdered. You see it happen in America with Black Lives Matter. There were queer people going out and protesting and they even lose their lives also. So at times I feel we're in a world by ourselves. That's just my take.
But we're together here.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to change the mood a little bit. Did any of you read something that you were really felt in disagreement with, or they're kind of? I'm asking because what's your name, the main moderator again? Liz, because you said it's reliving the story and sometimes reading something that you that are not your own words. I was curious if something like really struck you as, I'm uncomfortable. It's starting to the whole group, but the question came from you explaining this.
I think that the first two pages, the first two parts of the manifesto, they do, the ones that I read, yeah, there were, I can't remember exactly what they were, but I can remember thinking, oh, I wouldn't say this. That's why I think I mentioned, but yeah, it's an interesting interesting thing to be the voice for a person that you've never met, a person that you've in a situation that you didn't experience. So yeah, it's but there were, I think, I quite like the "Where Are You, Sisters," and I like the queer, the sections. What is queer? What is queer anyway? And then there's one, yeah, there's also another. There's parts of it that I do. I think this is why it's really good manifestos, because it actually, there are so many different voices, and yeah, we're each as people reading parts of it, but I think as a whole document, it kind of creates an understanding of a particular context, not of one person's opinion or one person's experience. So I do disagree with some parts. I mean, that's that's what it is. Yeah.
Hi. I want to thank you for a very powerful manifesto. I really enjoyed it, or it really came in. And I have to say that I don't have so much of a question, but more of a comment, but you can react on it. We heard indeed about marginalized groups. There was a reference to Stonewall, where a group of people, 50, were thrown out, but 3 queer Black persons stood up. And there was the reference also to the march, one single march of 100 people, while in another suburb there were thousands and frequent marches going on. I think that the message is also not so much to be very hostile, but to unite. If we stop thinking in boxes and elongating the LGBTQI plus A, PK, and etc., if we indeed unite as the queer community, we will be stronger and we can have our voices heard. Is that also one part of this manifesto, to unite instead of divide?
That's my interpretation. Yeah. Yeah. But I would be interested to hear from the rest of the people in the.
First, I would like to also say a comment to the previous question of what did I agree or not in this manifesto, and something that a lot of the times I encounter when I'm reading manifestos that are from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, or even before, is the lack of representation from Black trans people, and especially Black trans women. And given the fact that this was given through the New York Gay Pride Day in the 90s, and in the context of being in that specific city where riots started in 79 by Black trans women and trans women of color, and how through the manifesto they have only been mentioned once, and they're only talking and they're not really mentioning like also the need of not including, but also showing that trans women have been the lead for the pride and the like riots and for the fight for queer people's rights. And I think that there is strength both in uniting us as like a queer community, but also acknowledging the fact that there are different needs, different privileges, and different experiences inside the queer community, but that in general, we all face the same kind of violence or similar kind of violence, and we had to support each other as like a family, let's say. So like there are different members, but we all have to stick for each other. So I think that this feeling of family, it's important, but on the other side, know that every single member has a different need, and some members will need more protection in one moment than others, or in general, and that it's not only about being equally protected, but being protected as much as they're needed in their specificness.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for bearing with us. Yes.
Bearing and being with us. And I think we're still around, so if you want to talk more in private, feel welcome to do so.